if your next life-saving drug is hidden in a rainforest plant, and the people who taught us how to use it never got credit. Stay with me. We're going from forest medicine to modern lab breakthroughs. The Amazon rainforest is often called the world's largest natural pharmacy. For centuries, indigenous tribes have turned to its plants for healing, from pain relief to powerful treatments. What's fascinating is that scientists later discovered some of these same plants hold the key to medicines we use today. In this video, we'll explore the mysterious connection between ancient forest wisdom and modern science, and reveal how nature's secrets still shape the future of medicine. Chapter 1. The Amazon, a living pharmacy. The Amazon rainforest is more than just the green heart of our planet. It is, in many ways, the largest living pharmacy on Earth, stretching across 9 South American countries and covering over 2 million square miles. It shelters nearly 1 in every 10 known species on the planet. This incredible biodiversity includes an estimated 80,000 plant species. And scientists believe that thousands of them carry unique chemical compounds with the power to heal. For indigenous communities, the forest is not a distant curiosity or a scientific laboratory. It is home. For countless generations, they have relied on its plants, not only for food and shelter, but also for survival in times of illness. In these communities, knowledge of medicinal plants is carefully passed from elders to the next generation, often through stories, rituals, and lived experience. To them, each leaf, root, and bark has a role to play, whether it is calming a fever, easing pain, or helping the body recover after injury. This wisdom is not written in books. It is woven into daily life. What fascinates modern scientists is how precise this knowledge can be. With no formal laboratories or chemical testing, tribes identified plants with powerful healing effects. For example, some knew which leaves could stop bleeding, which roots could reduce inflammation, and which vines could bring relief from intense pain. These remedies were not random guesses. They were built from centuries of careful observation, trial, and shared cultural memory, a living science of the forest. In the 20th century, researchers began paying closer attention. They realized that what indigenous healers had been using for centuries often matched what Western medicine would later confirm in the laboratory. For instance, compounds that fight malaria, treat heart conditions, or act as anesthetics were first discovered through traditional plant use in the Amazon. What began as local remedies slowly made their way into hospitals and pharmacies worldwide. And here lies a mystery that still captivates scientists today. Despite decades of research, less than 10% of Amazonian plant species have been studied in detail. That means the vast majority of this rainforest remains an untapped resource, a library of life, filled with pages we haven't read yet. Some experts believe that cures for diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, or antibiotic-resistant infections may still be hidden in the leaves of Amazonian plants. But time is running out. The Amazon is under constant threat from deforestation, climate change, and human expansion. Each tree cut down could mean the loss of an undiscovered medicine. Each lost species could mean a cure that never reaches humanity. The rainforest, in many ways, is not just a pharmacy. It is a treasure chest of human survival. So when we talk about the Amazon, we're not only describing the beauty of nature, We're speaking about a living library of medicine that has saved lives for centuries and could save millions more in the future. The question then is, how did indigenous tribes, without laboratories or microscopes, first unlock these secrets of healing hidden in the forest? That leads us into our next chapter, the story of indigenous knowledge. Chapter 2, Indigenous Knowledge, Guardians of Healing Wisdom. When we think of medicine today, we often picture white lab coats, microscopes, and clinical trials. But for indigenous peoples of the Amazon rainforest, medicine has always begun with the land itself, the leaves underfoot, the vines climbing the trees, and the roots hidden deep in the soil. Their pharmacy is the forest, and their knowledge is the result of centuries, even millennia, of intimate connection with nature. Imagine being part of a community where survival depends not on hospitals, but on the wisdom passed down from elders. Among Amazonian tribes, healers, often called shamans or medicine men and women, hold a sacred role. They are not just doctors in the Western sense. They are spiritual guides, botanists, and psychologists all at once. Their responsibility is immense, to know which plants heal, which harm, and how to balance the two. What makes this knowledge extraordinary is its accuracy. Long before modern science confirmed anything, tribes already knew which plants could treat fevers, reduce pain, heal infections, or calm the mind. For example, the practice of combining multiple plants into a single remedy, something indigenous healers perfected. Modern biochemistry later showed that these combinations often create chemical reactions that make the medicine more powerful than a single plant alone. This shows not only wisdom, but a level of practical experimentation that rivals early laboratories. Researchers who have lived with indigenous communities often describe their process of learning. Elders teach through storytelling, through rituals, and through direct demonstration in the forest. Children watch and listen as the elders explain. This leaf soothes a burn. That root eases childbirth pain. That vine can still the heartbeat of prey, but also help a surgeon operate. It's a living library, memorized not in books, but in memory, culture, and ritual. But perhaps the most mysterious part is how tribes discovered these medicines in the first place. Some anthropologists believe it came from long centuries of observation, watching animals, testing plants in careful ways, and recording the results through oral tradition. Others believe dreams, spirituality, and intuition played a role. For many indigenous peoples, the forest is not simply a collection of plants. It is alive, communicating with them, guiding them to the right remedies. What's undeniable is the success of their methods. Studies showed that indigenous communities often know dozens of medicinal uses for plants that Western science had overlooked. In fact, researchers estimate that at least 25% of modern pharmaceutical drugs trace their origins back to traditional plant knowledge, much of it from the Amazon. This is knowledge born not in universities, but in daily survival, observation, and respect for the environment. Yet, despite its value, this wisdom is fragile. As younger generations move away from traditional ways of life, and as deforestation destroys sacred landscapes, much of this knowledge risks being lost forever. Some elders say that when a shaman dies without passing on his knowledge, it is as if a library has burned to the ground. And this raises a powerful question. How do we preserve and honor this wisdom? Because indigenous knowledge is not just history. It is a guide to the future, to new medicines, to new understandings of health, and to a deeper relationship between humans and the natural world. From fevers to snake bites, from spiritual illness to mental health, indigenous healers have shown that the forest itself can be a doctor. And it is this partnership between human tradition and nature that paved the way for modern discoveries. But how exactly did this local wisdom transform into global medicine? How did remedies from a remote rainforest end up in laboratories and hospitals across the world? That story begins in Chapter 3, From Forest to Laboratory. Chapter 3, From Forest to Laboratory. When ancient wisdom meets modern science, when indigenous healers in the Amazon treat illness. They are not just curing symptoms, they are practicing a science refined over thousands of years. For centuries, this knowledge remained hidden from the outside world, passed quietly from one generation to the next. But eventually, explorers, missionaries, and scientists began to notice something remarkable. The remedies of the forest worked, and that realization would change the course of medicine forever. Let's go back in time to the 16th and 17th centuries. When European explorers first entered the Amazon basin, they came in search of gold, land, and trade routes. But along the way, they encountered something far more valuable: plant-based cures that indigenous peoples had used for generations. One of the earliest and most famous examples was the bark of the cinchona tree used by indigenous healers to reduce fevers. To Europeans struggling with deadly malaria, this discovery was nothing short of miraculous. By the 1600s, quinine, derived from cinchona bark, had spread across the globe and became the first effective treatment for malaria, saving millions of lives. What began as a local forest remedy had become an essential medicine of global importance. Stories like this drew the attention of scientists. By the 19th and 20th centuries, botanists and chemists were venturing deep into the Amazon, sometimes with the help of indigenous guides, to collect plant specimens. Universities and pharmaceutical companies funded expeditions to bring back samples, hoping to unlock new medicines. Laboratories far from the rainforest in Paris, London, New York suddenly buzzed with experiments on Amazonian plants. But here's the fascinating part. Many breakthroughs would have been impossible without indigenous knowledge pointing the way. Without the guidance of local healers, explorers would not have known which bark to strip, which vine to boil, which seed to grind. The forest contains tens of thousands of species, yet tribes already knew which ones mattered most. Their centuries of observation acted like a map for modern science. For example, curare, once used by indigenous groups as a poison for hunting, became the basis for powerful muscle relaxants used in surgery today. Dragon's blood, the red sap of a rainforest tree, proved effective in healing wounds and treating ulcers. Ayahuasca, long used in ceremonial practices, is now being studied for its potential in treating depression and PTSD. Each of these transformations from indigenous remedy to pharmaceutical research represents a bridge between two worlds, the wisdom of tradition and the tools of modern science. Yet this story is not without controversy. For centuries, pharmaceutical companies benefited from indigenous knowledge while giving little credit, recognition, or compensation to the communities who had safeguarded it. This practice, often called biopiracy, raises important ethical questions. Who truly owns the knowledge of a plant's healing power? Shouldn't the guardians of the forest be acknowledged as co-creators of these discoveries? Today, some efforts are being made to change this narrative. International agreements like the Convention on Biological Diversity emphasize the importance of respecting indigenous rights and sharing the benefits of new medicines fairly. Collaborative projects between scientists and tribes now seek to preserve both the forest and the cultural wisdom that makes its secrets accessible. But despite these efforts, time is running out. Less than 10% of Amazonian plant species have ever been studied in laboratories. That means countless potential medicines, cures for diseases we may not even fully understand yet, remain hidden in the forest. Every year of deforestation and biodiversity loss doesn't just damage the environment. It erases opportunities for healing, discovery, and survival. Think about this. Penicillin, the world's first major antibiotic, came not from the Amazon, but from a simple mold, an accidental discovery that revolutionized medicine. If something so small, so ordinary, could change human history, imagine what might still lie undiscovered in the greatest rainforest on Earth. The forest could hold the key to the next breakthrough in cancer research, the next life-saving antiviral, or even treatments for conditions that remain incurable today. The journey from forest to laboratory is, in many ways, the story of human curiosity and of our willingness to learn from cultures far older than our own. It reminds us that science is not just about microscopes and experiments, but about listening, respecting, and building on the knowledge of those who came before us. And yet, this is only the beginning, because the most dramatic stories are found in the plants themselves. The fever-fighting bark that conquered malaria, the deadly poison that became a surgical tool, and the visionary vine that could reshape mental health treatments. Each of these plants holds a tale that connects indigenous healing to global medicine. So, let's step deeper into this journey. In the next chapter, we'll uncover one of the most famous Forest Hill Laboratory stories ever told, the discovery of quinine, the fever fighter that saved millions of lives. Chapter 4. Quinine, the fever fighter. Picture this: the thick canopy of the Amazon rainforest, late at night. The air is heavy with humidity, alive with the hum of insects and distant caws of unseen animals. A feverish child lies restless, their skin burning hot. An elder walks quietly into the forest, guided not by chance, but by knowledge passed down through countless generations. He strips bark from a particular tree, the cinchona tree, and prepares it as a bitter drink. Within hours, the fever breaks. For the tribe, this is not magic, it is medicine. This tree, hidden deep within the rainforest, would go on to change the course of human history. From it came quinine, the first effective treatment for malaria, a disease that has plagued humanity for thousands of years. Before quinine, malaria was one of the deadliest killers on Earth. It decimated armies, wiped out settlements, and shaped the fates of entire nations. But the knowledge of the cinchona tree spark discovered and perfected by indigenous peoples of South America, offered hope where none had existed. European colonizers first encountered this miracle in the 17th century. Jesuit missionaries, desperate to treat deadly fevers, observed local healers using the bark. When they tried it themselves, they were astonished. The results spread quickly. By the 1630s, cinchona bark was shipped across oceans, and soon it earned the name Jesuit's powder. In Europe, it became both prized and controversial. Praised for saving lives, but distrusted because of its association with Catholic missionaries. Still, the evidence was undeniable. This bitter bark cured fevers that had resisted every other remedy. The science behind it would only become clear centuries later. Quinine, the active compound in cinchona bark, works by interfering with the malaria parasite's ability to reproduce in human blood. Without it, the parasite cannot survive and the patient recovers. To modern science, it was one of the first clear examples of a plant-based medicine being transformed into a pharmaceutical drug. To indigenous peoples, it was simply what they had always known: the forest heals. But quinine was more than just a cure. It reshaped the world. Before quinine, vast regions of Africa, Asia, and South America were nearly impossible for Europeans to colonize. Malaria killed explorers, soldiers, and settlers in staggering numbers. Quinine changed that. With it, armies could march, colonies could expand, and empires could grow. In fact, historians often call quinine the drug that made empires possible. It was carried in the pockets of British officers in India, French soldiers in Africa, and American troops in the Pacific. Without quinine, the map of the modern world might look very different. But there's another side to this story: the struggle over control of the cinchona tree itself. Once the value of quinine became clear, colonial powers fought to monopolize the supply. Spain tried to keep tight control over South America's cinchona groves. But by the 19th century, seeds had been smuggled to Asia, where plantations in Java, modern-day Indonesia, began mass-producing quinine. By World War II, quinine was considered so vital that nations saw it as a strategic resource, as important as oil or steel. Soldiers who fought in tropical regions carried quinine tablets alongside their weapons. Yet, in all of this, the original discoverers, the indigenous peoples of the Amazon, were rarely credited. Their centuries of experimentation and knowledge were written out of history books, replaced with tales of European discovery. This pattern, repeated again and again, is a reminder of how easily traditional wisdom can be overlooked or appropriated. Even today, malaria has not disappeared. It still kills over 600,000 people each year, mostly in Africa. While new drugs and vaccines are emerging, quinine remains a symbol of the forest's power to fight humanity's deadliest diseases. It reminds us that the Amazon rainforest holds not just beauty, but survival itself, and quinine is only the beginning. If a single tree bark could change global history, what about the countless other plants hidden in the forest? Some, like curare, carried both fear and promise, deadly poisons turned into life-saving tools. Others, like ayahuasca, opened doors not just to healing the body, but to exploring the mind. Each plant is a story waiting to be told. In our next chapter, we step into one of the most surprising transformations of all. How a lethal poison once used on the tips of hunting arrows became a cornerstone of modern surgery. That story is curare, from poison to healing. Chapter 5, Curare, from poison to surgery, deep within the Amazon rainforest. Hunters once prepared for a ritual that was both sacred and dangerous. They would carefully collect vines, leaves, and bark, combining them with precision in ways known only to skilled elders. Slowly, the mixture was boiled down into a dark, sticky paste. It was curare, one of the most feared substances in the forest. The hunters dipped their arrows into this poison, knowing that even the smallest scratch could be fatal. When the arrow struck, curare worked silently but swiftly. Muscles weakened, breathing slowed, and within moments, prey collapsed. For generations, indigenous tribes used curare as a hunting tool, a secret weapon drawn from the forest's chemistry. But centuries later, in the sterile halls of modern hospitals, curare would take on an entirely new identity. What was once a deadly toxin became a life-saving medicine. How did this transformation happen? European explorers in the 16th and 17th centuries first heard whispers of this mysterious poison. To them, it was both terrifying and fascinating. Tales spread of arrows tipped with a substance so lethal that even a tiny wound could bring death. Samples were eventually brought back to Europe, where scientists and physicians began to study it. But without the indigenous recipe, the careful blend of plants, proportions, and preparation, curare remained largely a mystery. By the 19th century, however, chemists had begun to isolate its active compounds. They discovered that curare works by blocking the signals between nerves and muscles. The mind remains awake, but the body becomes paralyzed, unable to move or breathe. In the forest, this meant certain death. But in the laboratory, doctors began to wonder, could this same effect be used to help patients? The answer would come in the 20th century. In 1942, during World War II, Canadian doctors Harold Griffith and Enid Johnson made medical history when they used a purified form of curare during surgery. Until then, anesthesia was dangerous. Patients often woke up mid-surgery, their bodies fighting violently against the pain, making operations risky and imprecise. But curare changed everything. It allowed surgeons to relax a patient's muscles completely, making complex surgeries safer than ever before. From heart operations to organ transplants, modern surgery owes much of its progress to this once feared forest poison. The irony is striking. What indigenous hunters once used to stop a beating heart became a tool that allowed surgeons to save one. A substance feared for its power to end life was reimagined as a substance that preserves it. But this story, like quinine, raises deep questions about recognition and respect. For centuries, indigenous peoples guarded the knowledge of curare, refining its preparation with astonishing accuracy. Yet, when Western science adopted it, the role of indigenous wisdom was rarely acknowledged. Instead, textbooks spoke of scientific discovery, erasing the truth that without the guidance of the forest's original guardians, curare might have remained an enigma. Today, derivatives of curare are still used in medicine, though in far safer and more controlled forms. They are part of nearly every major surgery performed worldwide. Millions of lives have been saved, millions of operations made possible, all because of a plant mixture first prepared in the hands of Amazonian hunters. And yet, here too lies a warning. If a deadly poison could become one of modern medicine's most vital tools, how many other cures and breakthroughs might still be hidden in the forest? Each plant we ignore, each species lost to deforestation, could represent not just the disappearance of life, but the loss of a future miracle. Curare reminds us of something profound, that the line between poison and medicine is often razor thin, defined not by the plant itself, but by the wisdom of how it is used. What kills in one context can heal in another. And nowhere is that lesson clearer than in the Amazon rainforest. But while Curare reshaped surgery, another plant mixture was working quietly on the boundaries between body and mind. A brew that indigenous peoples considered sacred, ayahuasca. To some, it was a doorway to visions. To others, it is now becoming a powerful tool in mental health research. In our next chapter, we step into one of the most mysterious and controversial forest medicines of all, ayahuasca, the visionary brew. Chapter 6. Ayahuasca. The visionary brew imagines sitting in the stillness of the Amazon rainforest at night. The air is heavy, alive with a hum of insects, the distant calls of unseen animals. A fire flickers in the center of a small clearing. Around it, people gather in silence, waiting. In the hands of a healer, a shaman rests a clay vessel filled with a thick, dark liquid. This is ayahuasca, a brew that has been prepared for centuries, perhaps millennia, by indigenous peoples of the forest. To outsiders, it looks simple, a bitter drink made from vines and leaves. But in truth, it is one of the most complex and mysterious medicines known to humanity. The preparation itself is an act of deep botanical knowledge. The Banisтерopsis caapi vine, which contains powerful compounds called beta-carbolines, is combined with the leaves of the Psychotria viridis plant, rich in DMTA molecule, sometimes called the spirit molecule. Alone, each plant does little, but together they unlock a doorway. The beta-carbolines act like a key, disabling the enzymes in the stomach that would normally break down DMT. With that barrier removed, the DMT enters the bloodstream, traveling quickly to the brain. Within minutes, the drinker's perception of reality begins to change. Colors sharpen, patterns emerge, sounds deepen, and then visions, landscapes, memories, beings that feel more real than dreams. For many, ayahuasca is not just a drink. It is an entrance to another dimension of consciousness. But ayahuasca is not simply a hallucinogen. It is used in carefully guided ceremonies, led by shamans who carry generations of knowledge. They chant Icaro's sacred songs believed to guide the experience, offering protection and direction as visions unfold. Participants often report confronting their deepest fears, reliving past traumas, or receiving insights about their lives. Many describe a sense of connection to nature, to ancestors, to the universe itself. Western science long dismissed such accounts as superstition. But in recent decades, researchers have turned their attention to ayahuasca with serious curiosity. What they found has stunned the medical world. Clinical studies suggest that ayahuasca may have profound therapeutic effects, especially for mental health. People suffering from depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder have reported lasting improvements after guided ayahuasca ceremonies. Unlike conventional medications, which often mask symptoms, ayahuasca seems to help people confront the roots of their suffering, giving them a chance to process and heal. Brain imaging studies show that under ayahuasca, networks of the brain that normally operate in rigid patterns are disrupted, allowing for new connections, new perspectives, and often new hope. Yet, this is where science meets mystery. Because the indigenous peoples of the Amazon never framed ayahuasca as medicine in the Western sense, to them, it is sacred. It is a teacher, a spirit, a bridge between the physical and the spiritual world. They do not merely drink ayahuasca for healing the body, but for guidance, for wisdom, for harmony with the forest itself. And this raises questions. When Western researchers study ayahuasca in sterile labs and hospitals, are they capturing its true power? Or are they stripping away the cultural and spiritual context that gives it meaning? There is also controversy. Today, thousands of people travel to the Amazon each year for ayahuasca tourism, seeking enlightenment, healing, or simply an extraordinary experience. While some find transformation, others face danger. In inexperienced or exploitative hands, ceremonies can be unsafe, even deadly. And there is a deeper ethical problem: the commercialization of a sacred tradition. Indigenous communities who preserve this knowledge for generations often see little benefit as outsiders profit from their practices. Still, the story of ayahuasca is undeniable. A bitter brew from the rainforest has become one of the most talked about subjects in neuroscience, psychology, and spirituality. It stands at a crossroads between ancient wisdom and modern science, between healing and exploitation, between the known and the unknown. Perhaps what makes ayahuasca so powerful is that it doesn't just reveal something about the forest. It reveals something about us. It reminds us that the mind itself is a vast wilderness with hidden paths, dark corners, and untapped potential. And just as the Amazon is a treasure house of undiscovered medicines, so too may the human mind hold possibilities beyond our current understanding. But while ayahuasca opens doors of perception, the forest also holds remedies that act quietly, subtly, shaping daily life and resilience. From leaves that soothe wounds to plants that regulate blood pressure, the Amazon continues to be a living pharmacy. In our next chapter, we step away from visions and spirits to explore something equally vital: the everyday remedies of the Amazon. Plants that heal, strengthen, and sustain life. Chapter 7: Everyday Remedies. The Forest's Hidden Pharmacy. Not all Amazonian medicines are mysterious brews or mind-altering visions. In fact, the heart of indigenous medicine is found in something far more practical: the everyday remedies of the rainforest. These are the plants that heal wounds, calm fevers, ease digestion, and strengthen the body, the quiet miracles that allow life in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Imagine following an elder healer on a walk through the forest. To an untrained eye, the green wall of plants looks overwhelming. almost indistinguishable. But to the healer, every tree, every leaf, every vine has a story, a purpose, a use. He stops at a towering tree, strips a small piece of bark, and explains, for fever. He crushes a leaf from another plant and says, for stomach pain. He digs at the root of a shrub, noting for infections. In just a short walk, is pointed out a dozen natural medicines, a living pharmacy hidden in plain sight. Let's take a closer look at some of these remarkable plants. One cinchona tree, the fever fighters centuries ago. Indigenous people used the bark of the cinchona tree to treat chills and fevers. When Europeans encountered it, they discovered its power against malaria. From this bark, scientists later extracted quinine, one of the first effective treatments against the disease. Even today, derivatives of quinine remain in use. What began as a tribal remedy became a cornerstone of global medicine, saving millions of lives. 2. Cat's claw, the immune booster. This vine, with curved thorns resembling a cat's claw, has long been brewed into teas and tinctures. Indigenous healers used it for arthritis, inflammation, and wounds. Modern studies now suggest it stimulates the immune system and may even have properties helpful against certain chronic diseases. What was once seen as simple tea is now a subject of global research. 3. Guarana, nature's energy drink. The seeds of the guarana plant have been roasted and brewed by Amazonian tribes for centuries to increase stamina and alertness. Rich in natural caffeine, guarana has found its way into modern energy drinks and supplements. But unlike synthetic stimulants, it comes with plant-based compounds that help regulate energy release, giving a smoother, longer-lasting effect. For indigenous hunters, it was a way to stay sharp and focused. For the modern world, it became a billion-dollar industry. 4. Dragon's blood, the red sap healer. Cut the bark of the Croton lecleri tree, and a dark red sap oozes out, known as dragon's blood. Indigenous peoples apply it directly to wounds, burns, and insect bites, claiming it seals and speeds healing. Today, pharmaceutical companies study it for its antiviral and antibacterial properties. The sap that once treated cuts in the rainforest is now being investigated for fighting modern diseases. 5. Guava leaves, the digestive aid, a simple yet powerful remedy. Guava leaves are brewed into tea to treat diarrhea, stomach pain, and infections. Studies now confirm that the compounds in guava leaves are antimicrobial, reducing harmful bacteria in the gut. It's a striking example of how a common fruit tree doubles as a medicine cabinet. 6. Jaborandi. The vision herb. Indigenous peoples discovered that chewing the leaves of jaborandi plants produced an unusual effect: increased saliva and sharper eyesight. Later, scientists extracted pilocarpine from these leaves, which is now used in eye drops to treat glaucoma, a disease that causes blindness. A forest plant once chewed casually by healers now helps preserve vision worldwide, and this is just a glimpse. Researchers estimate that indigenous tribes actively use over 2,000 species of plants for medicinal purposes in the Amazon. Some are for everyday aches and illnesses. Others are for childbirth, snake bites, or infections. The forest is not just background, it is an active partner in survival. But perhaps the most powerful lesson is the approach itself. Unlike the Western model, where a single chemical is isolated and mass-produced, indigenous medicine is holistic. Plants are rarely used in isolation. Instead, combinations are prepared carefully, leaves with roots, bark with flowers, creating synergistic effects that modern science is only beginning to understand. This way of healing is not just about fighting illness. It's about maintaining balance between body and spirit, between community and environment. Medicine, for them, is not separate from life. It is woven into every meal, every ritual, every walk through the forest. Yet, as the rainforest shrinks, so too does this vast natural pharmacy. For every acre lost to deforestation, countless unknown remedies may be disappearing, perhaps even cures for diseases we struggle with today. Scientists often say that the next breakthrough in cancer treatment, antibiotics, or mental health could already exist in the Amazon, waiting to be discovered. The tragedy is that we may destroy it before we even find it. The everyday remedies of the Amazon remind us of something vital. The most extraordinary medicines often come from the most ordinary places. A leaf, a bark, a seed, things we might overlook can carry the power to heal and save lives. But beyond everyday use, there's another chapter of the Amazonian medicine story, one that is far more controversial. Because as Western companies and researchers explore this pharmacy, questions of ownership, ethics, and exploitation arise. Who truly owns this knowledge? And who should benefit when it becomes global medicine? That is the debate we step into next, in Chapter 8, Biopiracy and Ethics. Chapter 8, Biopiracy and Ethics. Who owns the knowledge of the forest? Until now, we've seen the Amazon as a treasure chest of healing plants, a living pharmacy guided by indigenous wisdom. But behind this wonder lies a controversial question. Who owns this knowledge and who profits when it becomes global medicine? Picture this. An indigenous healer spends his life learning the secrets of the forest. He knows which vine heals, which leaf calms, which root brings relief. Then one day, scientists arrive. They study, collect samples, take notes. Years later, a pharmaceutical company patents a drug worth billions, all based on that healer's knowledge. The tribe receives nothing, no credit, no compensation. This is the heart of a global debate. Biopiracy. Biopiracy refers to the unauthorized use of indigenous knowledge and genetic resources by corporations or researchers for profit. And in the Amazon, it has happened many times. Take the story of the ayahuasca vine. For centuries, indigenous peoples treated it as sacred, using it in healing and spiritual ceremonies. In the 1980s, a U.S. researcher tried to patent the plant, effectively claiming ownership of something that was never his to own. For a time, it meant that anyone else who wanted to use or study the plant commercially would need permission and potentially pay royalties. Outrage followed, led by indigenous groups and activists who fought back. Eventually, the patent was revoked. But the message was clear. Ancient traditions could be hijacked by modern systems of intellectual property. Another example is the quinoa plant. While not strictly Amazonian, it reflects the same struggle. Indigenous farmers in the Andes cultivated and protected quinoa for thousands of years. Yet, when its health benefits caught global attention, Western companies rushed to patent quinoa-based products. For the farmers, this was more than unfair. It was theft of heritage. And then there's the case of the neem tree in India and turmeric. Both traditional remedies were patented by foreign companies, sparking international lawsuits. These battles highlighted a global pattern: wealthy nations and corporations extracting knowledge from traditional societies, turning it into profit, while the original keepers are left behind. But the Amazon is the front line of this conflict because its biodiversity is unmatched. Scientists estimate that less than 1% of rainforest plants have been studied for medicinal use. That means there are thousands of undiscovered cures still hidden. For corporations, this is a gold rush. For indigenous peoples, it is a threat, a risk that their sacred knowledge will be taken without recognition. The ethical dilemma is complex. On one hand, pharmaceutical companies argue that patents and research are necessary. Without them, there would be no funding to turn plants into safe, standardized medicines. After all, raw bark or sap cannot always be shipped to hospitals. It must be tested, purified, and produced at scale. But on the other hand, indigenous communities ask, why should billion-dollar profits be made while the people who discovered the medicine in the first place remain in poverty? The truth is, this is not just about medicine. It's about power, ownership, and respect. To many indigenous peoples, plants are not commodities. They are relatives, spiritual beings, part of a living system. To claim ownership over them through patents feels like claiming ownership over life itself. International efforts have tried to address this. The Convention on Biological Diversity and the Nagoya Protocol are agreements that aim to ensure fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from genetic resources. In simple terms, if a drug company develops medicine from an Amazonian plant, they are supposed to share profits and credit with the communities that protected the knowledge. In practice, however, enforcement is difficult. Many indigenous groups still lack the resources to defend their rights in global courts. There are, however, success stories. Some partnerships between scientists and indigenous communities have led to shared recognition and benefits. A few pharmaceutical companies now fund conservation efforts or healthcare projects in the regions where they source knowledge. These are small steps toward fairness, but the gap remains vast. The bigger question may be this: can two worlds, indigenous tradition and Western science, truly work together? One values plants as sacred, beyond price. Teas, beyond price, profits, and laboratories. And yet, if cooperation is possible, the rewards could be extraordinary. New cures, preserved cultures, and a future where healing is shared rather than stolen. But time is running out. The Amazon loses thousands of acres of forest each day to logging, mining, and agriculture. With each acre lost, potential cures vanish not just for local tribes. Chapter 9: The Future of Amazonian Medicine. The Amazon has been called the lungs of the earth, the world's greatest pharmacy, and the last frontier of human discovery. But perhaps its greatest role still lies ahead, shaping the future of medicine in ways we can only begin to imagine. Let's start with the numbers. Scientists estimate that the Amazon rainforest is home to over 80,000 plant species. Yet, less than 1% of them have been studied for medicinal potential. That means we've barely scratched the surface. Imagine walking into a library where 99 out of every 100 books remain unopened, and inside one of those unopened books could be the cure for cancer, Alzheimer's, or the next global pandemic. Already, some breakthroughs hint at what's possible. The bark of the cinchona tree gave us quinine, which changed the fight against malaria. The sap of the dragon's blood tree is being tested for antiviral drugs. Compounds from frogs, snakes, and even insects of the Amazon are now in labs. Studied for everything from pain relief to blood pressure control. Each discovery is like a spark of light in a vast darkness, but the real blaze of knowledge still lies hidden. Future Possibility 1. New frontiers in cancer treatment. Cancer remains one of humanity's greatest challenges. Researchers are exploring Amazonian plants that naturally produce compounds capable of stopping cell growth, boosting the immune system, or even targeting tumors without harming healthy cells. Indigenous healers may have already used some of these remedies for centuries without framing them in scientific terms. If studied and developed, such plants could revolutionize oncology. Future Possibility 2. Super antibiotics with antibiotic resistance on the rise. Doctors warn of a future where common infections could once again be deadly. But in the Amazon, plants and animals have been locked in chemical warfare for millions of years. Their survival depends on producing powerful defenses against bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Scientists believe the next generation of antibiotics may come from rainforest species, nature's own master chemists. Future Possibility 3. Mental health breakthroughs. The growing interest in ayahuasca is only the beginning. Compounds from Amazonian plants may help unlock treatments for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and even neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Unlike conventional drugs, these medicines may not just mask symptoms, but help the brain rewire itself, opening possibilities for deeper healing. Future Possibility for genetic engineering and biotech. Imagine mapping the DNA of every Amazonian plant and animal. With advanced biotechnology, we could recreate compounds in laboratories without harvesting the forest itself. This would mean endless supply without destruction. Synthetic biology could one day allow us to print medicines inspired by Amazonian plants, bringing cures to every corner of the world. But with these possibilities come heavy questions. Who gets access? Will future medicines be shared freely or sold at prices that only a few can afford? Will indigenous communities, the original guardians of this knowledge, finally be recognized as equal partners in discovery, or will history repeat itself with biopiracy? And then, there is the greatest risk of all, the loss of the rainforest itself. Each day, thousands of acres are cut, burned, or cleared. With them vanish not only ecosystems, but potential cures we may never know existed. Some scientists warn that by destroying the Amazon, we may be burning the greatest library of medicine the earth has ever produced without ever reading its pages. Yet, there is hope. Conservation projects, indigenous leadership, and global awareness are growing. More scientists are working directly with Amazonian communities, treating them not as subjects, but as partners. Slowly, a new vision is emerging, a future where science and tradition walk hand in hand, where the healing power of the forest is protected, respected, and shared with all of humanity. The future of Amazonian medicine is not just about plants, it is about perspective. It challenges us to see the rainforest not as a resource to be exploited, but as a living ally. It asks us to value ancient wisdom alongside modern science. And it reminds us that our survival as a species may depend not on conquering nature, but on listening to it. And so, the next time we speak of medicine, perhaps we should look not only to the hospital, the laboratory, or the pharmacy, but also to the forest, where answers to humanity's greatest challenges may still be waiting in silence. Hidden in leaves, roots, and songs of the earth. Chapter 10. Guardians of the Green Pharmacy for Thousands of Years. The Amazon rainforest has been more than a home to countless plants and animals, has been humanity's greatest living pharmacy. Every leaf, root, and flower carries not only the memory of ancient traditions, but also the potential for future cures that the world has not yet discovered. Indigenous tribes have acted as guardians of this knowledge, passing it carefully from generation to generation, like a sacred flame that must never be extinguished. But today, that flame flickers in the wind. The Amazon is disappearing, trees cut down, lands burned, ecosystems destroyed. With every acre lost, we don't just lose plants, we lose knowledge. We lose the chance to discover new medicines. We lose voices of wisdom that have survived for centuries. Imagine the cure for the next global disease being destroyed before we even know it exists. That is the reality we face. And yet, there is hope. Around the world, scientists, conservationists, and local communities are coming together to preserve this green treasure. Modern medicine is beginning to recognize what indigenous healers have known all along, that healing is not just about chemistry, but about respect, balance, and connection. By protecting the forest, we are not only saving biodiversity, but also honoring the cultures that have safeguarded its secrets for millennia. The truth is, we are all guardians of this green pharmacy. Even if we live thousands of miles away, our choices, what we consume, what we support, what we stand for, affect the future of the Amazon. Protecting it is not just about saving plants or animals. It is about saving possibilities. Possibilities of cures, of knowledge, of deeper wisdom about how humans can live in harmony with nature. So the next time you take a medicine, remember, some part of it may have come from the rainforest. And somewhere, an indigenous elder may have been the first to discover its power. The Amazon is not just a forest, it is a library of life, a sanctuary of healing, and a reminder that our health and the planet's health are one and the same. If you found this journey into the mysteries of Amazonian medicine inspiring, join us in exploring more hidden stories of history and science. Subscribe to Decoding History and Science. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with someone curious about the wonders of our world. 'Cause together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping them alive.